Good morning, everyone. My name is Gail Snyder, and I'm Executive Director for Dementia Friendly Fort Worth, and we are excited to welcome you to this education session, The Future of Healthcare Through the Eyes of Today's Nursing Student. This program features Dr. Michelle Kimsey, Assistant Professor at TCU Harris College of Nursing and Health Sciences, and she will be joined by several of her students, Savannah Asher, Sydney Burke, Mariah Davenport, Chelsea Martin, Emily Ramos, Kelly Thompson, Molly Williams, and Tori Zaya. We would also like for you to note that this Zoom education session is being recorded. If you do not wish to be included in the recording, please keep your mic muted at all times. And we're going to move now directly into our questions that we have for the students. The first question we'd like to talk to you about is, please tell the group how you became interested in taking a course on the older adult with dementia. Do you have a specific passion that grew out of this experience? Michelle, I'll let you direct the question to each of the students individually. Thank you.
What could be a scary experience in the hospital and things like that better for this population. And I also just saw in the hospital what deficits we have in caring for this population, and that just made me sad. So I just really grew passionate about it. And yeah, I mean, I got to volunteer and we got to go to the West Center and things like that. And I just had such a great experience that I don't know how to describe it. I just love them. So I just kept coming back.
Okay, Kelly.
So I am kind of similar to what they kind of said. I don't know anyone personally that was diagnosed, but through volunteer experiences that I had in high school, I was always around it. And then I think it was my first foundations clinical, when we first got out there. It was like my second day working, and I was paired with an older nurse, and she kind of just showed me the side of nursing that like they don't know how to care for these kind of patients. She kind of thought that she was a bother and kind of put her off and didn't really know how to care for her. And so I decided to spend a lot of my time, and I decided to spend a lot of my time that clinical, and I sat with the patient and made sure that she got the nutrition because she wasn't able to feed herself. So I sat there and fed her breakfast and just like talked to her. And it was just such a cool experience for me. And then when I took Dr. Kimsey's class, it was just really fun to have all those experiences. And now going into an adult population to work in, I'm just super excited to have this knowledge and help other nurses and other people understand and have more knowledge on dementia.
Emily?
So I have never really been around anyone with dementia. I haven't experienced it in my life. It wasn't until the fall semester that a good close friend of mine was talking to Dr. Kimsey about patients with dementia and PIPA Snow, and their passion for the society was just overwhelming, and it just really got me intrigued with it. And I have a daughter who has special needs, and the way they were talking about it and the way PIPA Snow talks about it in her conferences and such reminds me of how I kind of care for my daughter. And so I have this huge passion now for the dementia, I guess, society and people. And it just really grabs at my heart. And having been in the classroom with our volunteers that come in and share their stories, it really touches me in a way that I never really felt that I could relate to, because I've never experienced it with a patient with dementia as an older patient, but I relate to it on a different level with my daughter, which is kind of crazy, but I don't know how it just correlates, I guess, somehow to the care that we have to provide children and especially with disabilities, how soft and gentle we are and how we explain things over and over in a kind of way that they understand, and how much love and support we need to give them. And it just, I don't know, it just is, love it. I fell in love with it. And going through this course, I was able to use what I learned in clinical. And I've had more patients than I realized before that have dementia. And each person has been different. And it makes me feel so amazing having the tools now to actually help them and educate the nurses and give them ideas that we've learned in class to help their future patients as well.
Mariah?
Yeah, so I had an experience when I was shadowing at a nursing home. I got to experience a patient with dementia, and I was able to help and participate with her care. And the nurse that was caring for her really just took such good care of her and really was so compassionate. And it just really sparked such an interest for me. And I got to help with her. I got to feed her and bathe her. And I really grew quite connected to this patient over the summer and the time that I got to spend with her. And so then when I got the opportunity to take Dr. Kinsey's class, it was so interesting to learn more about the process and the disease itself, and learn different techniques and ways to care for these patients. And my passion just started to grow more and more as I got to learn more about it. And then when I got to see it in this clinical setting, I saw such a stigma, I think, around dementia patients from the hospital, a negative stigma, and it really, really bothered me. I was assigned a patient.
Okay.
This was probably my second patient assignment, and she was pretty confused. She had dementia, and all of the PCTs and even the nurses were like, "Oh my goodness, you have this patient. Like, we're so sorry. Like, I feel bad for you." And I was really taken back by that and didn't realize that there was such a stigma around it. And me, I actually, this was probably my favorite patient of the semester in clinical. And I was able to use some of my techniques and stuff that I had learned in Dr. Kinsey's class with her. And it was such a really cool experience. So that's where my passion grew from.
Tori?
My grandpa had dementia, and I was able to take care of him for the 11 years that he had it. And by me taking care of him, he was what inspired me to want to be a nurse. And I agree with others. At TCU, we don't get a large focus throughout our education on dementia care, which is why I decided to take Dr. Kimsey's course to have the proper knowledge on how to take care of these patients in a way that makes them feel safe and comfortable. And as an upcoming behavioral health nurse, there is a floor in my hospital specifically for patients with dementia. So the skills and education I learned in the class will be really helpful for me.
Gail?
So some of you have already touched on this just a little bit, but we'd like to know what dementia training has been included in the nursing program that you've completed up to this point.
I'll let Chelsea, do you want to start? Y'all can go in the same order. If somebody has something special to say, go ahead and say it, you guys.
Sure. So, Dr. Kimsey, I think you visit 2 classes. Foundations is the first, and then I believe also in our med-surg class, and she really focuses on highlighting the differences between like hospital-acquired delirium and dementia and how you can spot the differences. But then also part of her teaching, even though it's a small amount of time, includes some level of simulation. So she likes to bring what she calls her toy box down. And we use some of the virtual dementia tour equipment to simulate for a couple of students to show for the class what it might be like to live with dementia and try to follow instructions in terms of like visual and auditory difficulties, in terms of she has these like gloves that she puts on her hands so that our dexterity isn't great. And so that's kind of like the introduction. And then if a student chooses, we have the option to take Dr. Kimsey's elective, which goes into a little more detail about the different types of dementia, and then actually rehearsing with other students skills that we can specifically cater to patients with dementia. And through that class, when I was in it, we actually had the opportunity to go to the simulation lab to use a simulation that had been developed by another program. And I'm hoping that's something that we'll be able to revise and kind of continue to incorporate in the future, because simulation is such a big part of our experience as nursing students. And I think that if we can kind of nail it in terms of creating a realistic scenario with a person living with dementia and also their caregiver, that it could be really beneficial. And hopefully I would like to see them kind of incorporate that into our sim program so that people who don't choose to take the elective would also have that experience. But currently it's, to my understanding, and other students correct me if I'm wrong, kind of those 2 guest lectures by Dr. Kimsey that everybody gets, and then choosing to participate in the elective after that.
Yeah, tagging off on that, I mean, I was very lucky in that my behavioral health clinical, we had the opportunity to go through Dementia Live, because I had done VDT with Dr. Kimsey in her class. So we had that opportunity, but other than that, it's really just the 2 guest lectures, which is really hard to, and especially because it's lumped with other things. I know in foundations, it's lumped with delirium and depression, and so it's hard to get the unique understanding and skill set, or even just the baseline of it, when it's lumped with everything else. And I think what Chelsea was saying about the importance of the simulation is so true. After talking to a lot of my classmates when I was in Dr. Kimsey's class, that's really what kind of flipped the switch for us, is and gaining an understanding of what it could be like. There's no way to truly fully experience it unless you're in that position. But for a lot of us, you don't know how much they experience, and just to get a taste of that really switched the way I thought personally. I think it helped me understand a lot of behaviors that might come out of things. And so I think it's a really important thing that should be implemented in several courses. But yeah, unfortunately with nursing, there's a lot to shove into not a lot of time. But yeah, definitely for sure. I think the simulation part has been the most valuable, at least for me personally.
I think they really hit on all of the things that we do at TCU. There's not much else that I've been exposed to, but I think if you take like Dr. Kimsey's elective, it definitely is a smaller group of students, but that's really where you get all of the education. And then you also get the experience by going and seeing different things and having people come talk to us in class, which I think is super beneficial.
I will say too, though, it sounds like we're bashing TCU, but to my understanding, TCU has a lot more dementia-focused education than most other nursing programs have. So while we're definitely like, we would like to see more, we want to see more, I would just caution you guys to keep in mind that TCU, and Dr. Kimsey specifically, has brought a lot of value and a lot of focus to this topic, to our program, which I'm excited that I was exposed to, but I don't think it should be something that makes TCU unique. I think it's something that all nursing programs should be doing.
For sure. We're definitely very blessed in the opportunities that we have, because a lot of schools don't even have a dementia elective, and the fact that we have that, or we even have the option, you know, if we have a makeup clinical for behavioral health, we can go do the Dementia Live or VDT, and bringing speakers like Teepa Snow to campus. So we're very blessed in that aspect, in that a lot of schools do not have those opportunities. And what Chelsea said, this needs to be a widespread thing, not just a TCU thing.
Anybody else have any more comments on that regarding the offerings for dementia? Michelle, I think you're up next for the next question.
Okay, this is Savannah. Are you, I think I muted you, but you might want to turn it back on. Savannah is another one of the nursing students who didn't have the opportunity to introduce herself, but I'm going to have her. Savannah, can you tell us a little bit about the new program, the GRN program?
Yeah, the GRN program at TCU is the Geriatric Resource Nurse. It's kind of focused more on older adults and preparing us for when we get out, because no matter where we go, we're always going to be faced with an older adult, whether it's an older adult being the parent of a younger child or the older adult just being your patient in general. So it's really geared to help us gain skills and different tidbits of knowledge for when we get onto the workforce.
Okay, thank you. You know, another thing I just wanted to Chelsea's thought is TCU, really our College of Nursing is one of the first universities in Texas to be designated dementia-friendly building. So all of our faculty, you walk up and down the halls, you'll see dementia-friend magnets and everything throughout the hallway. So TCU is extremely supportive, and our goal is to get the whole university and the whole campus dementia-friendly. But currently our faculty and staff all have gone through the dementia-friend session. So thank you for bringing that up, girls. Okay, Sydney, Kelly, and Tori, tell us more about the new student organization that's on campus.
Oh boy. So we have started Students for a Dementia-Friendly TCU. We just got acceptance to start our organization earlier this semester. Unfortunately, we, like many others, are facing the whole COVID crisis and dealing with that. But I'm going to try not to talk too much because I want Tori and Kelly to talk too. But kind of how we got our start is at least the three of us were in the same, in Dr. Kinsey's class at the same time. And unfortunately, we were like, well, there's no advanced class of this because I would take it. But we wanted to get together and have an organization. There's an organization for pretty much everything on campus: cancer, pediatric things, autism, things like that, which are all wonderful causes, but why is there not one for dementia? So we took it on upon ourselves to start it. And I think our purpose statement sums it up best. The purpose of this organization is to raise awareness of dementia and its impact on the individual, family, and community, as well as foster students who strive and advocate for proper care, treatment, and respect of those living with dementia. So overall, that's our main goal. Right now, we have 39 members. We are open to staff and faculty members, which is unique about our organization, and they can actually sponsor a student's membership once we get due set up. And then we have grad students if they're interested, people of all levels, all majors, and it's a wonderful thing. But yeah, in the sake of me not talking too much, I'm going to let Kelly and Tori chip in.
I really like that we started this organization because TCU students and faculty, just to be able to learn more about the dementia care and what's happening in the world today, and also help others find volunteer programs if they want to work alongside those with dementia, and to overall just raise awareness on our campus to see what we can do to help with dementia care.
Yeah, I think it's a very unique organization that we started to create. And I think for me and Tori and our other exec member, Hannah, who couldn't be here today, it's sad for us that we couldn't start this earlier in our process, but we're glad that we were able to be the front runners to get it up and running. And I think it's just really unique, especially for TCU students to be part of this and be able to kind of learn more if they don't take a class because they don't have time for their schedule. It could be something that we give education to students, and then they're able to use that for their clinical practice and for when they graduate and become a nurse. And then I think it's just really unique how we work with community members, because I think it's just a very cool aspect, and it kind of builds on our education as well if we have their input on everything and if we learn from them, which I think is very important.
Yeah, so kind of what Kelly is talking about, and our exec board is extremely unique in that we have community members as a part of our exec board. So right now we have one person who lives with dementia and his daughter, who's one of his caretakers. And the purpose of this is it's not just us saying, this is what we think is best and this is what we're going to do. It's really utilizing their input and having them help guide the way we do things. We are hoping to add more members to this because not every experience with dementia is the same, and it's so unique, and the more input we can get, the better. So we're hoping to expand that. And then one more thing I wanted to mention about the organization is we have a national affiliation with the Youth Movement Against Alzheimer's, or WIMA. We were actually the first Texas chapter, which is really exciting. Yay, Texas. And so it's really exciting because the benefits of affiliating with a national chapter or national thing like WIMA is that we have so many more resources. It's a great organization that was started by college students for college students, and now it's just expanded. These kind of opportunities include, right now they're running a program where we can have virtual dinners with an elderly adult who is quarantined, so they don't have to have dinner alone. So we'll just tell them when we're having dinner and we log on and they can have dinner with us. And so we're really trying to take advantage of these opportunities. I also had the experience of going to Washington, D.C. in October with them to talk to Congress members about why this issue is so important and changes that need to be made. So there's a lot of opportunities. I'm hoping next year we have the opportunity to get more people involved in that and have more people go to DC and partake in these experiences and really form advocates out of our members. So yeah, that's a little bit about what we do.
I think quickly, just another thing that is kind of cool that we were trying to do is I was trying to set up a huge event that was going to be kind of including community members and students at TCU. And so we were going to do kind of like a giant fun run, which I think is just like a fun way to kind of promote dementia and like education in a way that kind of appeals to everyone, because there's always like different events going on for different cures and causes. And I think that if we are able to be one of those and like put on these really cool events, we could get tons of people to come out and just become aware of what we're even doing in the first place, and then have more involvement if they want to.
Any other comments on that? So our next question is, and I know some of you have talked about this already, but what opportunities have you had to interact with persons with dementia outside of the hospital setting?
So part of the dementia elective with Dr. Kimsey is that we spend ideally about 6 hours, I think. How many was it, Dr. Kimsey? 6? Okay. Over the semester at the James L. West Center with their day program. And so for me, outside of a rare encounter in the hospital, that was the first time that I had really been like immersed in a group of people with dementia. And so it was a really cool experience because typically with the clinical setting in nursing school, you know, you go in and you're focused on doing vitals and doing assessments and giving medications and stuff like that. But with us being at the day center at James L. West, it was more about building relationships and learning how to communicate and how to lead activities and really just foster like a sense of community with the people in the day center. And so that was huge for me in terms of learning the little quirks about like, how do you explain something if they're not catching a word that you're talking about? Or how can you learn to continue a conversation when maybe they have aphasia and they're not responding to your question in a way that you expect? So it gave me an opportunity to practice a lot of those interpersonal relationship skills in a way that I haven't had the chance to do before. And that was super cool.
I think it also just kind of gives you the human aspect of it. Instead of in the hospital, a lot of it's just so clinical. We see people, and it's not necessarily intentionally, but we see people kind of as a diagnosis. So it was really just the opportunity to sit and like be humans together and do fun stuff and eat Jell-O and pudding and whatnot and do crafts. And I loved it so much. I kind of forced my way back in during the summer to come volunteer for a little bit because I loved it so much. And on top of that, I mean, in my own personal experience, I am also an EMT, so seeing how differently people with dementia can be treated when it comes to EMS and things like that, it took me educating some of my preceptors in that, what you're doing is not going to work. And, right now, that's not the pressing matter. And as you can imagine, there's a lot going on with an ambulance. There's lights, there's sirens, it's cold, there's so much going on. So I was very fortunate that I had taken Dr. Kimsey's class first, so I had this knowledge and was able to apply it and say, maybe we could dim the lights, or, if it's not absolutely urgent, maybe we could turn the sirens off and not stimulate them as much. So I think it's been really cool for not just my hospital experiences, but just my people experience, and knowing this is how I can treat someone, and seeing them more as humans instead of a diagnosis has been great.
Anyone else? Can anybody speak to the research side of dementia that over at TCU, what we're doing? Has anybody been a part of the dementia research?
Yeah, so I'm actually on a team with Dr. Kimsey and another professor, Dr. Carol Howe, and we're working on a research study right now trying to discover what the health literacy needs are for persons with dementia and their caregivers. And so at the beginning of the school year, so last fall, Dr. Kimsey and Dr. Howe organized focus groups and led discussions with persons with dementia, as well as focus groups with caregivers, just asking them, when you were diagnosed, what information do you wish you would have gotten? Or what information did you get? And kind of discovering, through the process of developing health literacy, how the information was able to impact their life and their understanding of their diagnosis, and kind of the way that they move forward as their disease process progresses. And so right now we're working on analyzing the data and kind of pulling things together for our paper, but it's been a really cool experience, a really cool and kind of a sad experience at the same time, because like I said when I first started talking, we have information, and I know that from being in Dr. Kimsey's class and from learning from organizations like Dementia Friendly and the Alzheimer's Association. I know that we have resources, but these resources don't seem to be being pushed out as aggressively and as, I guess, like at the first moment of diagnosis, handing someone resources and saying, you're not alone in this, we don't expect you to be alone in this, and there's information and resources for you. Just proactive engagement with persons living with dementia is something that I'd really like to see. But being involved in research has been super rewarding, and I think that it's amazing that TCU's kind of designated resources to that, because, like I said, we know a lot, but there's still more to be learned and kind of figured out. So research is really awesome, and it's been a wonderful experience.
Thank you, Chelsea. Chelsea's a great teammate in this program for sure. Can some of y'all speak to how having this enhanced dementia knowledge has helped you moving forward?
Can I go? Okay. I think having this advanced class in my own personal repertoire of tools and skills that I've developed, I learned the hand over hand kind of method, and whenever you're speaking to people with dementia, to give them 20 seconds to respond, even though it may be uncomfortable. And just small little tidbits of that have really helped me in the clinical setting, because my GRN part of this, we're supposed to aim to only work with people over the age of 65. And I've personally come encounter with at least 3 people in the hospital with dementia. So those little skills have helped me treat them better and kind of advocate for better things for them. Yeah.
I think to kind of piggyback off of that with the skills, a lot of the skills, like she said, hand over hand, it's nothing that greatly changes your practice. It's just a small little tweak. And it's something that's so easy to teach other people. And so what I think is cool is that I'm one person who took the class, but since I've taken it, I have friends that work as patient care techs in the hospital. And I go to them and I say, hey, Erin, have you ever heard of this technique? And I can kind of spread the information with other people who then go back to their units and say, hey, I tried this technique with a patient and it totally changed my interaction with them. Let me show you how to do it. And so I think it's really the tactical, very small, simple skills that kind of go against our logic, which is why it's not innate and we don't do them automatically. But once you learn them, it takes 2 seconds to teach somebody else who can then teach other people and use it with their patients. And so I think just kind of the ripple effect of all of us learning, even though it's not everyone in our program necessarily, it's all skills that we can take to our hospitals and to our units and share with our friends. And that's been like a huge impact that I've seen.
I know for me personally, even beyond the skills, because the skills, while important, I think for me, it's helped me identify where the holes are in our care and where the flaws are in our system, and it's going to be in every system. And it's kind of helped me recognize that I can be a catalyst of change. Like Chelsea said, even just teaching 1 or 2 people this technique and how that can impact their experience. I think with all of us in this situation, I think a lot of us can be a catalyst of change, and sometimes you just need to be able to have the knowledge and be like, oh, I know how to fix that problem, or I know how to do this. So I think for a lot of us, it's really brought that recognition on that we can be part of a bigger change and the change that needs to happen in the healthcare system.
I think for me too, especially about to graduate and starting my job, I think that it's given me like the confidence to work with these kind of patients. Like obviously you learn all the skills, which they've talked about, but just knowing how to like talk to them and just being a little more patient with them, I think it helps kind of have the confidence to go and work with those patients. And also I think for me, it's really I've gotten like a big appreciation for caregivers. And I think a lot of times we are so focused on just the patient, and really the patient should be the patient and the family together. And I think it's just so important to involve the caregivers and really recognize that they are probably struggling as well, because it's such a hard thing to grasp. And they're going through, I'm sure, lots of different emotions. And so to put them also in a priority is kind of amazing. And I think it'd be really cool if we kind of do that all as nurses and get that education for everyone.
So several of you have mentioned the Dementia Live experience, and that's one of the tools that Dementia Friendly uses, and we feel like that can make a huge difference in the outcomes for family members who are serving as caregivers as well. And so if you know family members who are interested in taking that experience, once we move out of these restrictions, James L. West has that available by appointment, and Dementia Friendly Fort Worth can also take that to any family group, church group, business, community group that's interested in that experience. So before I move into the last set of questions, I wanted to back up and ask, I know that several of you attended our Fifth Street Cafe, which is our dementia-friendly social club, and that club is now meeting online by Zoom during this time when we can't be together in person. But I'd like to hear a little bit from you about what that experience was like for you, because it's not a hospital setting, it's not a care setting, it's a social setting, and so that's a little bit different than what we've already talked about. So let's hear about that.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. I can't believe that left my mind, because it brought me so much joy when you brought it up. So there was a handful of us in Dr. Kimsey's class who went to Fifth Street Cafe, and we brought stuff to make gingerbread houses. And so with the people who were there, we made these gingerbread houses. But I think the coolest part of it is one of the people that I met was telling me how she used to make gingerbread houses from scratch, and about how kind of since her diagnosis, she hasn't really been baking as much anymore. And so just to watch her get to do something that she talked about loving and doing so much for years and years is something that I think about often, and something that really kind of put into perspective. Like, I feel like sometimes people almost baby people living with dementia, and they're like, oh, they can't do this because they have that, or oh, they won't enjoy this because whatever. And something as easy as building a gingerbread house was something that so many took such joy in. And it all comes down to, like Cindy was kind of talking about, like taking the time to do it. And so the Fifth Street Cafe, I think, is really cool because there is no like objective. You're just coming and being together and spending time and being in community with one another. And so I'm really glad that we got to do it. And I'd love to see TCU continue to be a part of that in the future.
You're most welcome to continue to be a part of that. Anybody else want to comment about that experience? Nobody else? Okay, so I'll go into our last set of questions. What opportunities have you had to observe or participate in the care of persons living with dementia in the hospital setting? And I know there's been a few comments about that, but if you've got any new information to add to that, feel free to speak up.
So one of my patients in the hospital, she had dementia. She was also at a really high risk for aspiration. So I was able to help her like brush her teeth and like just help her remember to swallow every time she was eating, and helped her to cut up her food. It was like mechanical soft, so as much as we could cut it up, and just help her just eat and make sure she had good oral hygiene.
Okay, anybody else?
I had a patient that kind of struck me, and he still is in memory every day. When he came into the hospital, he had had fractured his hip, and he didn't remember doing it or falling, and his wife wasn't able to come and visit. And every time he would call the call light, I would come in and I would have a fresh face and reintroduce myself and call him by his name. And he was just so happy to see someone and to be with someone that it took me back. And I just remembered all of our training and realizing that he just wanted someone to be there with him and to give him that support and to understand how he was. So I would go in and reorient him to where he was and what had happened. And he was good. He was, happy and excited, and he wasn't in any pain. And then I would leave. And then a few minutes later, he would go and call the call light again and be upset. And I would go again with a happy face and a really nice, out appearance. And he was so happy to see someone that we would keep doing this over and over again. But it just felt amazing to see his happy smile every time someone would walk in the room to be there with him. We had a that was older that he enjoyed, and it was just made me feel so warm just being able to provide him that comfort for that time that I was there. But I never lost sight of how my appearance, how he understands it. So however I entered the room and however I was with him is how he absorbed. And so I don't know, I think that training was really valuable for me. And just to remember that having that outward appearance and all of those nonverbal communication devices are very important when working with patients like this, because they feed off of what they see through us. And he will always be one that I will always remember just for his smile and his just love. It was amazing.
What a great lesson to kind of bring home, that our attitudes and our facial expressions and our mannerisms make such a difference in the care that we provide. Even if we're providing great care, but we've got a bad attitude or an unfriendly expression, it can change how the outcomes are. Any other comments on that question?
I think kind of going off of what we can do, I think it's also important that we learn not to personalize certain things. One experience that stands out to me is last semester I was in clinical and we were just giving a patient a bath. a lot of the nurses kind of didn't want to do it because she gets kind of feisty. It was an elderly woman with dementia. And they had taken that personally. And some of the students that we had, it was a group of us going in there, a lot of them were taking it personally, like, oh, why would she, try to scratch me or do X, Y, Z? And it took kind of me sitting down and saying, it's not against you personally, it's a disease process. And if you think about it from their shoes, they're scared. They don't know what's going on. You're trying to undress them and clean them, and it's cold. The lights are bright. There's a lot of noises. And so I think it's really important for us to recognize that this is a disease process. I mean, does it make them trying to scratch us acceptable? No, but it's not personally towards us. They're scared and they're reacting in a way that they can. And so I think that was one of the bigger takeaways I also got was they're not doing this to be mean or X, Y, Z. They're scared and we need to be there for them and try to make this experience as best as we can.
And taking a look at it try to see it from their perspective can change the outcomes. And that's why we also love the hand under hand assistance. That's one of TIPA SNO's programs, because when we use the hand under hand skills, it allows that person to feel like they're participating in whatever the task is, which totally changes their perceptions about what's happening. And so if any of you who've joined us on the call would like more information about that, we'd love to talk with you further about that and see if we can't get you into a class to learn about that. The other thing that we want to talk about just briefly before we go into a few minutes of questions is, how would you change some of the concepts or methods of care? Don't everybody jump at once.
I mean, for me, it's kind of like what I said earlier, is that nurses don't mean to rush through, and they don't mean to cause distress for someone with dementia in the hospital. But without the education and just kind of the reminder of, here's the message that you're sending when you do this, or here's how this person interprets that when you're doing it this way. I feel like just the concept, TIPA SNO talked about this when she came to TCU, of like thinking about how I would do something to me is not a way to decide how you should do something to someone living with dementia. Like how I put on a jacket for myself is not necessarily the best way to try to put a jacket onto a person with dementia. I mean, simply because putting something onto someone else is totally different than putting it on myself. But then especially when you can't necessarily bridge that gap by communicating with them with your words, really changing your approach to those small things to try to minimize the distress that it could cause is so huge. And it, like I said, it's not intuitive. It can be a little wacky when you learn it for the first time, but just really trying to spread those skills and spread the understanding of, I know this is a little bit different, but altering what you do normally with a patient just in the small way makes such a huge difference. And so that would be the change that I would want to see. And I know I've harped on skills a lot just because in terms of the hospital and what I think is realistic in terms of implementing, like I'd love to say, let's sit down and talk about dementia for a whole bunch of time so that you can understand it as a whole. But if bare minimum, all we give them is the skills to be able to say, there's a dementia diagnosis on their chart, I should alter my care in this way, I think would make such a huge difference for the person living with dementia and their hospital experience.
Great. Anybody else? So how do you see these ideas and concepts changing healthcare for the better?
Well, as we know, our population is aging, which means there's projected to be a lot more people with dementia in the coming years. And I think overall, at the end of the day, we just want better care for our patients. And I think by implementing these small skills and having education and sharing what we know with everybody else, we can have better care for our patients, and hopefully they'll be a little bit less distressed. Because at the end of the day, that's what's most important, is providing the best care that we can possible and minimizing distress in this situation. So that's what I would love to see, if we can implement a lot of these changes successfully.
Great. Thank you all for your input and for sharing with us some of what you've learned over the course of your studies. And now I'd like to open it up. So I'm going to unmute everyone so that we can have some questions from our participants. So if anyone has a question, now's your opportunity. Any questions?
I just wanted to thank each of you. I'm a caregiver. My mother has dementia, and you all are doing such great work. And thank you, Dr. Kimsey. You're amazing. So just keep doing what you're doing. It really, just that little tidbit of hand over hand will really help me a lot. And my mom really struggled with the whole showering thing. She's in a skilled nursing center, and I've just learned to love her dirty, because it's horrifying for her to have somebody want to strip her down and touch her in bright lights and all those things. So anyway, I just appreciate all of you. I think you're amazing.
So Debbie, maybe we can talk outside of this call to see if there's a way that we can't connect with the community where your mom lives to help them gain some of these skills, which might make it easier for your mom to get the care that she needs.
Yeah. You know, surprisingly, she's not in a memory care unit. And she is so social and so sweet that she actually has done better since she's been at this location, because she has constant interaction with people. She feels like she's a caregiver to everyone else who's there. And when I talk to her, you know, I FaceTime her a couple times a week, and she doesn't understand why I haven't been coming to visit. And it's kind of like that movie 50 First Dates. If y'all have watched that, we have to start over every day and tell her, oh, well, there's this virus. Oh, no one told me about that. And so we go through that every single day. But like I was saying, it's not a memory care unit, so they don't really do a lot of things as far as memory care. But again, she's just got that social interaction, and she's got a way where she can be stimulated all the time. The nurses love her. The caregivers are great with her because oftentimes she presents as being perfectly normal. Like at times the caregivers have confused her with someone who's come in from the community to help, because she walks around with a notebook and paper, and she always looks beautiful. And, you know, about 3 minutes in, you realize, oh, okay, something's going on here. But it really has been a surprisingly good experience for her.
That's always good to hear. Any other questions? Jim and Nancy, do y'all have any questions?
I would just echo the comment of the other healthcare provider. I think what TCU is doing with the dementia program, as well as the outreach and the other long-term plans Dr. Kimsey has, is phenomenal. And it was a privilege to get to speak to the class, as well as continue to work with her. Her passion and her enthusiasm, as well as her kindness that Michelle displays, I think is contagious, and she makes it I think that attitude spreads as far as interaction with folks who have dementia.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. John Wells, do you have any question? Holly, would you like to make any comments, since you've worked with some of these wonderful students at James L. West?
Well, it is always so good to hear back and recognizing so many of your faces also. We hate not being able to have students there right now, but that's part of what's going on. To hear that, you know, the things that you learned in Dr. Kimsey's class, and then when you came to the West Center or the Fifth Street Cafe, all these different places, that you're already taking those and using them. That's so wonderful for us to hear. And we want to continue to hear back from you and be invited to things like this, so that, because we then take that back and it gives us more opportunity to go out and do more education. So we support you 100% at the West Center.
Thank you, Holly. Michelle, do you have any additional comments that you would like to make before we close up?
Well, I probably do. I really just wanted to thank not just everybody who is participating in this Zoom, but I really want to thank my students who have taken the time out of their day. And I have to tell you, they have taken this. Yeah, I have a passion for people with dementia, but they have taken this passion themselves and they've run with it. I mean, they've started the student organizations. They've wanted to be in the research. They want to keep going. They want to be a part of everything. And when I put out an email to ask who wanted to be on a panel, I mean, it was just instantaneously. So I appreciate them. There's 3 that are seniors, Chelsea, Tori, and Kelly, and just they're phenomenal. And I just can't wait to, when I send them out, I think all of us at TCU are so proud of them, and hope the very best for these guys.
Thank you so much. It's been a delight for all of you to be with us. And if you have any interest in our other events, as I mentioned earlier, we have our Fifth Street Cafe that meets by Zoom every Wednesday from 11 to 12:30. And today we actually launched a 30-minute activities program that meets Monday through Friday from 10:30 to 11 o'clock. And we have guest presenters who will be presenting various activities each day of the week. So today we did a movement program called Ageless Grace, and it will soon be available where you can use it as a recorded event. And tomorrow we have Mary Poole, who is the Director of Dementia Care at Christian Care Services, and she will be doing a session on music therapy. So I hope you'll join us. If you connected to this call through the MailChimp that I sent out, the link for that activities program is in that same MailChimp. So thank you all so much for being with us today. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'm so sorry that we weren't able to do this as a live presentation, but it's been a lot of fun to meet you all through computer Zoom and see a little bit about your surroundings. So take care, and thanks again for being with us. Have a great rest of your day.
Well done.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.